right.
It's Easter season. It's tree blossoming season. It's budget season.
It is that.
And you can pick whichever one of those seems most fun to you, but we're going to talk about budget season.
I like the first three.
The first three were good. Yeah, well, that's understandable. It is, it does take up a tremendous amount of time, especially for somebody serving on the Appropriations Committee,
Yes.
as you do. But it is tremendously important work. And I know from your standpoint, you want to stick to your guns for your party,
Right.
and for the state of Pennsylvania. And the governor and the Democrats, they want to stick to their guns, and for the same reasons, for their party and for what they see as the best for the state. But the talks sometimes can really drag on, as they did last year. And I know that you don't want that. You want to come to agreement.
Well, you certainly don't want to have it drag on longer than it needs to, but I think it's important that we all focus on what we're really talking about here, and that's taxpayer dollars being used to help Pennsylvania. So whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, I think at the end of it all, we want to do the right thing for our constituents, and I think that's the big concern, just like last year and the year before and the year before, when Governor Shapiro comes in with his budget spending proposal that's well above our expected revenues, that creates a significant gap for us to try to address. This year, again, we're looking at most likely a $6 billion gap based on the governor's 53-plus spending proposal that he introduced in February. So it creates many challenges for us, but I think you have to look at what's the right thing to do to be responsible with taxpayer dollars, because at a time like we're in right now, we're seeing cost increasing, families are struggling. The last thing we want to do is put the state in a situation where we have to find revenues from another source. And where does that come from? It comes from the taxpayers. We as House Republicans don't want to see that happen. So that's why we fight so hard to try and get that spend number down, understanding, of course, that we do have fundamental needs that we have to provide for within state government. So that's really the challenge that's created. Looking at a $6 billion gap, the governor wants to take roughly about $4.5 billion out of the rainy day fund, which is our budget stabilization fund in the event that we truly have an emergency here in Pennsylvania, draining all of our remaining surplus. And then he's introduced, once again, taxation and regulation of skill games, legalizing and taxing recreational marijuana, and increasing the minimum wage to ultimately $15 an hour. Those aren't really things that are in place right now. So I don't think you can bank on revenues that you don't have. So what we're looking at is roughly around $47 billion expected in revenues, while the governor is proposing, as I said, $53 billion plus. So that creates a big gap that we have to try and fill or somehow meet in the middle before that June 30th deadline.
The revenue picture in Pennsylvania, there are a lot of people who say that it's going to be greatly enhanced by data centers coming. And by all of the economic benefits that they will bring. And they will bring economic benefits here in Indiana County and all across the Commonwealth. There are new data center stories coming every single day, pro and con.
Right.
And so those revenues come. But you think back to the Marcellus shale boom, and how that hit, and everybody said, oh, we're saved because here's the Marcellus shale. We're going to get all kinds of energy out of the ground. That means money for the Pennsylvania economy, and snap of the fingers, and that revenue was all gone. Is there the danger that we're going to rely too much on data center money in order to boost our economy and therefore boost our spending?
Well, I think the data centers are a huge generational change for Pennsylvania. We're going to see, like we are here in Indiana County, billions of dollars come back to this Commonwealth. But you have to look at the big picture as well. AI and the need for data centers isn't going away. We rely more and more on our electronic devices. So I see this as a long-term play, because it is going to be there. There is going to be a need for it. But it's ultimately not just the data centers that we want to bring back to Pennsylvania. By getting rid of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative like we did in last year's budget, we've opened the door for energy production to come back to Pennsylvania. So while you'll see those data centers coming in, you'll also see the baseload energy that they need to come back as well. So you'll see that happen. And then coupled with that, you're going to see a lot of other ancillary industries come back to Pennsylvania too. From what I understand, these data centers come in, and then the businesses that support them and use them come in as well. So it's not just the data centers, it's a whole demographic change when it comes to bringing people and businesses back to Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. A lot of energy issues across the state of Pennsylvania, and the need for energy. And great news from Homer City Redevelopment yesterday, the first structure going up to feed into the grid, the PJM grid. Concerns about a power line project coming out of West Virginia, cutting right across Pennsylvania, including Indiana County, headed up toward the north central part of the state. And legitimate concerns that people have about what that's going to do to the Pennsylvania scenery, to the Pennsylvania economy, all kinds of different concerns having to do with that, the ecology and all. Are you concerned about projects such as that?
Well, I'm just learning about the proposal for cutting through southern Indiana County. I read about it in the Gazette last week and have my staff looking into it now to see what those impacts truly are. Obviously, though, we do have to address the need for energy and to get it from where it's generated to where it needs to be utilized is important. So I think we want to make sure that the impacts are as minimal as possible, but at the same time, we have to be aware that we need to have power to make our society function.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other things that you'll be discussing in Harrisburg over the next 6 months or so as the legislative calendar opens up a little bit.
Right.
Some of the things that you would like to see happen in Pennsylvania, big issues or little issues that people aren't paying a whole lot of attention to.
Well, I think we want to continue to move in the direction of making things more affordable for people, lowering energy cost. I think we want to continue to streamline our permitting process like we did last year to bring business back to Pennsylvania. The ultimate way to get us out of this situation where the spend number is higher than the revenue number is to generate more revenue. So that seems to be a fundamental direction that we can move Pennsylvania in if we continue to do the right things based on the bills that we're passing, based on what we put into this upcoming budget. As you said, Todd, the negotiations are beginning in earnest. The House Democrats introduced the budget bill last week. All the other bills that go with it, funding for state-related universities, all the other state agencies, their funding bills moved out of the House Appropriations Committee last week. So that really puts it on the table now so we can start having those discussions about what we do want to see moving forward. But ultimately, for me, I think it's about making life better for Pennsylvania residents, people here in Indiana County, making sure that you can get a good job and you can provide for your family through that job.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a couple of things there that sort of stand out, and one of those is education funding.
Yes.
Both on the scholastic level and higher education, there are big issues.
Yes.
And those issues don't go away. They've been the part of every budget cycle since, I think, back in 2011.
Yeah. Right.
Because there's a real disparity in the way that schools are funded. Schools funded here differently than schools funded other places of the state. Do we have a clear path to actually solving that puzzle? Because it is a puzzler.
Well, I really think that we have to take a deeper dive into education. As you know, it went through the court system and the adequacy funding that the administration continues to put in year after year. This year, it's another $565 million increase for K through 12 education. And year after year, we continue to put more money in at a time when we're seeing fewer students, and really the results for that investment aren't being shown in the test scores. Now, I know testing can be variable, but it really, we're putting more money in and not seeing the results. And I think that should be a concern because you just can't throw money at a problem and think it's going to solve itself. Now, we're fortunate here in Indiana County to have great public schools. But in other areas like in Harrisburg or Philadelphia or some of those more urban areas, you continue to throw millions and millions of dollars at a problem, and it's not being solved. These kids are still coming out with inadequate educations. They're still missing out on opportunities. So I think rather than just continuing to channel the money, we have to find a way to improve the educational opportunities for these kids. And school choice is a big thing. It really is in all corners of this Commonwealth. And we need to make sure we're giving kids those opportunities to be successful no matter where they live. And right now, I think that they're just throwing money at a problem and they're not finding a way to solve it.
Is the argument legitimate that school choice will draw students to the best of schools and leave the struggling schools to struggle even more?
I think in some cases, the kids need that opportunity. In other cases, you have to fix that school district or make some fundamental changes. And that's really not occurring. That's something that I think we have to have a bigger, deeper discussion about. I don't see it that way, really. I think that when the kids have a choice and their families have a choice, it's better for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about higher education and the state system of higher education.
Yes.
And the way that they approached it this year, I thought was interesting in the budget hearings with 4 university presidents rather than the chancellor appearing before the appropriations committees in both chambers. I thought it was interesting. I thought Dr. Driscoll's comments were interesting as well, especially when he talked about the number of employees at IUP that are no longer there. The staff cuts have been pretty deep in the last 6 or 7 years.
Well, I think that they made some hard decisions at IUP over the past few years to basically right-size what they see happening. They're doing great things. Dr. Driscoll was not in our budget hearing. He must have been before the Senate. But I think IUP is doing the right things. The School of Osteopathic Medicine is very exciting for everyone, and I think we're going to move in the right direction.
Is IUP propping up other schools within the state system of higher education?
Well, I think we need to make some fundamental changes. Excuse me for a minute, Todd. I need a drink of water or something. Can you pause it for a second?
Yeah, we'll do this. Representative Struzzi is going to step out for just a moment, and we'll try to get back with him in just a moment. It's Indiana in the Morning here on WCCS. It is Indiana in the Morning on WCCS. Back with Representative Jim Struzzi as we continue here our conversation about state budgeting, about the state system of higher education, the various things that we've been discussing here for these last 10 minutes or so. Other priorities that you will have in the next 5 or 6 months?
Focused on improving our district services here in Indiana County. We started doing mobile offices where we go out to the senior centers, help with property tax, rent rebate forms. We're really excited that we have my 3rd annual Youth Fishing Derby coming up on April 18th down at the Young Township Park. Kids 15 and under can come out. We stock it with a lot of trout, give away a lot of prizes, get assistance from local fire companies. So that's April 18th. You can go to our website, repstruzzi.com, and register online.
All right, very good. Those are all big things coming up on your schedule. Meanwhile, the schedule in Harrisburg is you're back next week?
We're back the following week. Next week, we're home for Easter, obviously, this weekend. And then we go back the next week for a couple of weeks, and then we really start to dig into the budget, as you said, get those negotiations going, start moving some of the bills. They moved out of, as I said, the House Appropriations Committee last week. So really the process has begun in earnest to craft a state budget.
Yeah. All right. So that's going to be a hard nut, isn't it?
It is hard. As I said earlier, we have a big gap to fill. We'd like to see the economy grow. Obviously, we want to make lives better for all Pennsylvania residents without putting those at risk further, because the governor is spending far beyond what we see happening in revenues in the next few years. And if we drain the rainy day fund, if we drain our surplus, we simply have nothing to rely on when it comes to state government. So that's why we get really concerned when we spend more than we have, looking at the outlying years, and there won't be anything to backfill the continual increase in spending. That's why we as House and Senate Republicans take a hard line on the spend number, because you can't continue to spend what you don't have. That doesn't work in household budgeting, and it doesn't work in state government.
Going to get a chance to dunk some worms here this weekend?
Well, I sure hope so. It's exciting. I went down last week for the Youth Mentor Fishing Day at Black Lakes Memorial Park, and it was great to see so many people come out, volunteers, young people, and so real excited. It looks like some beautiful weather here coming up this weekend for the first day of trout season, and of course, happy Easter to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming in.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Todd.
State Representative Jim Struzzi with us here this morning, and it is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com. Fox News next, top of the hour, and then Josh with us from the WCCS newsroom.